Hello again, this is Matthew Pumley. Now that my tutorial about accounting is familiar to you, we can begin to study the financial world. Purpose of this tutorial. No exercise here will be conducted, just an overview as detailed as possible so as to understand this world that sometimes seems, well, say, hazy. Economy is a question of figures, and finance is figures. It has a language of its own, and the purpose of this tutorial is for most people to understand this new language. Finance is often misjudged, but without finance, economy lacks the blood that makes it work, money. So get ready. This is not that difficult. Let us look back at the balance sheet of Jules the Crocodile. Finance deals with the liabilities side of the balance sheet, the equity or capital, top right. Talking about financial markets means talking about equity. The capital of a company is composed of shares, and what is exchanged on the financial markets are mainly shares. A capital is composed of stocks, also named shares. They represent a title of ownership of a company. They entitle their owner to receive part of the company's benefits, what is named a dividend. Each share has therefore a corresponding value, which is the base for its trade. Understanding this is already understanding a lot of finance. This said, I am proposing to you a 4 chapters tutorial. 1. Where does finance come from and what is it for? 2. The main players and how things work. 3. A typology of financial markets. 4. The world of banks and banking. Well, answering the question, where does finance come from, requires getting back to the medievals, exploring the past. This explains a lot. Let's take the example of the letter of exchange, which is a medieval achievement and is the remote ancestor of today's finance. How did it work? Well, to begin with, you had a buyer, suppose an Italian merchant. He agreed on a certain amount of sheet for a given price to buy from, say, a seller in Bruges, which is in Flanders, today Belgium. Roads were dangerous. It was very difficult to transport money. Therefore, what would this merchant do? Well, banks already existed at the time. This Italian merchant pays or would pay the agreed amount to his own bank. His bank had a reporting bank in Bruges. So the buyer's bank sends a letter of exchange with a value, limited in time, for the amount of money the Italian merchant wished to buy his sheep. The bank in Bruges would pay the seller the amount, and therefore, at the end of the day, the merchant in Bruges could deliver his sheet. That is the way it did work. The first stock exchange appeared in northern Italy and France in the 14th century. Their purpose was to deal bills of exchange, hence the importance of knowing what a bill of exchange stood for. As of the 14th century, the central stock exchange of Europe was Antwerpen, today in Belgium. In Holland, the tulip crisis in 1637 is the first identified stock crisis. Investors had bet on deliveries of tulips that never have shown up. Things tend to accelerate as of the 19th century. Northern America and Europe experienced the Industrial Revolution. Generalization of the limited company status, consisting in sharing risks, and in case of downturn, limiting the loss to the money that is invested, make financial markets more and more attractive. Economy creates more and more infrastructures that require international financing. Think of the construction of the Russian Trans-Siberian train line between 1880 and 1900, which is achieved thanks to French capital. Well, throughout the century, financial markets are not just a way of financing economy, they are a way of life, a way of making a living. Besides, parallel new technologies generate new growth and require new financing. Value and volume of financial markets keep growing, as demonstrated hereunder by the Dow Jones Index over 100 years. History shows that since the beginning of time, finance generates value and feeds the economy. In return, economy feeds finance. This is a virtuous circle. This said, let's look at functions. All right, money is generated, but now what are the financial markets for? One can easily distinguish 6 functions. 1. Price setup for a share. 2. Mobilization of funds. 3. Obtaining liquidity. 4. Risk sharing. 5. Easy access and cost. 6. Capital formation. Let's look at them step by step. Function number 1, price setup. The financial market permits to establish a price for the different financial instruments which are traded between buyers and sellers. Prices of shares, for instance, are determined by the market forces, demand and supply. A share will be bought for the dividends it may generate, explaining most of its value. Stocks or bonds follow the same trend as a usual demand and supply for goods. As the graphic here shows, the price varies as per the total demand and the quantities available, like here. Function number 2, fund mobilization. The financial market helps mobilizing investor savings. The motivation for persons seeking the funds is dependent on the required rate of return originally expected by investors. The expected return on investment will explain this mobilization of funds. The return follows the following formula. The rate of return on investment is the current market values divided by the initial cost. Function number 3, liquidity. Market allows liquidity to be generated. This depends on 2 elements. Market liquidity, or how quickly an investment can be sold. Financial liquidity, the ability to meet financial obligations. Function number 4, risk sharing. Financial markets permit risk sharing, those undertaking the investment being different from those who are investing their fund in the investment. This risk-sharing aspect explains most of the success of financial markets. Function number 5, easy access and cost. The financial market platform puts the potential buyer and seller into relation easily. This helps saving their time and therefore money. The interrelationship is in itself a cost reduction. This is limited now since private equity, not listed investment, has been gaining terrain those last 20 years via investment funds and the internet, of course. But both of them are now part of financial markets institutions. Function number 6, capital formation. Financial markets provide the channel through which the new savings of the investors flow in the company, which helps in the capital formation of corporations. This can be made mainly by, for example, making a company public, present on the stock exchange, calling for a capital increase, announcing this creation of a company. And this will help us conclude this chapter. So after chapter 1, where does finance come from and what is it for? Next chapter will be the main players and how things work. Chapter 3 will be a typology of financial markets, and Chapter 4, the world of banks and banking.